So I get him on the toilet, and then as he's there, he's like, oh wait, I gotta pee. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, let's get your pants off. And he's like, wait, no, I pee standing up. And I'm like, okay, so let's stand you up. Little did I know what was gonna happen next. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, as you guys can tell from the title of this video, I'm going to be sharing my fieldwork or clinical experiences. This video has been highly requested, and I just saw Deerenee's The OT Chronicles do it, so you guys can check hers out too if you guys are interested. So I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to be sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I am going to be as open and honest as possible with my experiences. I had very good times during field work, but I also had not so good times, so grab a snack. I feel like this is going to be on the longer side. Get comfortable. But before I jump into it, make sure that you guys subscribe, like, and comment if you haven't already, because it really does mean a lot to me. So join the family. I feel like we've been growing every single week, which is really exciting, and I've been getting a lot of sweet messages from you guys on Instagram, which honestly make my day. By the way, the best way for you guys to reach me is through Instagram. I've had people email me in the past, and honestly, my email gets so cluttered. I'm the person who doesn't delete their email, so like my inbox is a hot mess. So the best way to reach me is through Instagram if you guys are interested in talking to me. But anywho, I always say I'm gonna jump right into things, and then I don't. So let's jump into it for real. So when you're in OT school, you have to complete a certain number of fieldwork or clinicals. We use the words interchangeably. So for level 1 fieldworks, the part-time ones, these are usually done during the semester, so while you're taking classes. And then level 2 fieldworks, these are full-time. They're done during the summer. It's basically a full-time job that you don't get paid for. It's where you do the most learning, and it's also where you might do the most crying. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. I'm just kidding, but I did have some crying moments, which I'll get into. So my first ever fieldwork in OT school was my second semester, and it was at a mental health outpatient clinic. If you guys have watched my videos before, you know that Columbia is very mental health focused. So our first year, a lot of what we were learning was the mental health side of OT. So this clinic was basically like a day program for people who had mental health conditions. So they would come in like at 8:30, 9 a.m. They would have breakfast, they would socialize. Throughout the day, they would go to different groups, they would eat lunch, and then like at 2:30, they would go home. So in this placement, I was very hands-on. It was twice a week for 7 weeks, I think it was. And I would run like 2 to 3 OT groups a day. And this was really where I learned to run groups. And I'm so glad that I was that hands-on, because it really prepared me for my level 2 in mental health, which I will get into. And then this experience was also where I got more comfortable talking to people and learning how to build rapport with patients. Growing up, I was a very shy kid, and I still consider myself to be really shy. Like, I've worked a lot to break out of my shell. The fact that I even have a YouTube channel, like, that's something I would have never thought that I would do. A lot of the clients who would come to this clinic were actually only Spanish speaking, and you guys, I have never been so grateful in my life to know Spanish, because I was able to connect more with them and like relate to them. So shout out to my parents. We would run groups on a whole bunch of different things, like self-care. There was one group where we made our own soap. We would run like cooking groups, poetry groups, exercise groups, you name it. And it was a really fun time. The only thing I would say that I didn't like, not about this placement specifically, but just like about mental health fieldwork, was that the lines were very blurred between the professions. So I know that as an OT, we're taught to see things differently. Like, for example, if we're running a cooking group, we're not just running it for fun, we're running it to see how people work functionally, cognitively, and we're looking at all of those things. But on the surface, because there was a lot of other disciplines who were there too at the clinic, and they would also run groups, and on the surface, the groups looked the same. So I just felt like the disciplines, like, you couldn't really tell us apart. And you know what? I worked hard for this degree, and and I paid a lot of money for this degree. So I want people to recognize the discipline that I'm in and not just jumble me together with everyone else, which is kind of how it felt at that place. After that fieldwork, I had my level 2 fieldwork in the summer. So the full-time, real deal, not getting paid, free labor. Okay, we're gonna pause and we're gonna talk about this a little bit because I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. I feel like if you're a student and you're expected to do a full-time clinical rotation or field work or internship in order to complete your degree, and it's a full-time, like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, which doesn't leave you room to find another job, I feel like you should get compensated for what you're doing because it just makes sense. On the contrary, we actually pay tuition to be there. So backwards. I just had to let that out of my chest. Continuing. So for my level 2, it was also mental health. It was an acute care inpatient psychiatric unit. So I saw some very interesting cases while I was there. A lot of interesting things happened that summer that I don't think I can fully talk about because HIPAA and patient privacy. But it was a lockdown inpatient psychiatric unit and we had to wear panic buttons. So that can already tell you a little bit of the situation. So since this was acute care, this was like the first line of help for these patients. So people who were coming in were actively dealing with their mental health. Again, a big chunk of my job there was to run groups and kind of provide coping mechanisms to these patients on how to navigate their mental health. But a lot of it was the psychiatrist working with the patients, trying to figure out the right medications for them, because the goal in this setting was to get them stabilized to then receive the outpatient help that they needed. So in this placement, what I liked about it was the change that you would see in the patients from when they would come in day 1 to 4 or 5 days later. For my level 1 in the outpatient clinic, those people have been going there for years. So it's not to say that there wasn't progress, but progress was definitely a lot slower, so it was harder to see. This was a very fast-paced setting. Everything was like go, go, go. I would come in 8 in the morning. We would have rounds with the team. So that was a psychiatrist, doctors, nurses, social workers, therapists. And during rounds, we would go through all of the new admissions. We would get updates on what happened overnight. And at the same time, while all of this was going on, we would also be writing treatment plans for the patients who came in the day before. During rounds was when we would also get assigned our patients to do evals on. So I would have at least 1 eval a day, sometimes 2. After rounds, if I had a little bit of time, I would go and do that eval, and then after that, I would run a group. And after the group, I would get my evals chart and write notes. Notes were not electronic, they were handwritten, so that was a time. If I still had time, I would check if I had any patients that I had to write progress notes on or discharge notes, and I would try to do those. If there wasn't time, that was left for the end of the day. We would also have to log attendance for every group that we ran, so I would do that. By that time, it would be lunch, then it would be rounds again, and in the afternoon round, we would give updates on the person that we evaled, how we feel that people are doing on the unit, and talk about discharge plans. Then I would run another group and then documentation for the rest of the day. Most days I would run 2 groups, and then there were occasional days where I would run 3. And I'm saying I because I'm speaking from my experience, but I wasn't the only one there. There were other students. So in my level 1, one of my classmates, Sarah, which I actually introduced her in one of my vlogs. So she was my partner for that fieldwork and another fieldwork that I had down the line. So we kind of like planned and ran the groups together. And then for my level 2, there were also other students. They weren't from my program though. So we had 2 NYU students, 2 Kane students, and then I was the only Columbia student. So for that fieldwork, my partner was Armando. He's an NYU student. If you're watching, hey. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better partner that summer. He really had my back through some tough times. And honestly, everyone was so great. I missed them so much, and I actually still keep in touch. And they're out there doing their thing. They were actually a year above me because of the way fieldwork works for different programs. So they're actually already OTs out in the field, killing the game, and I'm super proud of them. And I know I'm being super cheesy right now, so I'm gonna stop before people throw up. So during this placement, I also grew some tough skin. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm super emotional, and that's just how I've always been. I've always been very in touch with my feelings. So I did have a pretty tough experience in this place, and it was on a day that both our supervisors were out, so I'm like 100% sure that this wouldn't have happened if they were there. But we were in rounds, and And like I said, rounds was the place for, if you eval someone, it was basically your time to speak up and just give like your assessment on the patient. So on the day that both our supervisors were out, we were in rounds, and the rounds were usually led by the psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist is going down the list of patients and he gets to my patient. So because I evaled him, I spoke up and I gave my assessment. And he replied with, "Thank you for your contribution, but next time, don't speak unless spoken to." I kid you not, mouths actually dropped. I look around the room and everyone's literally just in shock. And I was obviously in shock because that was the last thing that I was expecting to come out of his mouth. So like I said, unfortunately, I feel emotions very deeply, and I was so in shock that the rest of the meeting I was just trying to hold back tears. But after it was over, I went back to the office and I just started crying. And I don't really know why. I feel like it was more the embarrassment and the fact that I was just a student, so I couldn't really respond back to that. I basically just had to sit there and take it. But everyone in that room knew that it was uncalled for. A lot of people came up to me afterwards and they were like, "What the heck just happened?" And like later on, I learned that this guy is just not a very nice person. Like he kind of treats everyone like they're below him, and everyone didn't really have a lot of nice things to say about him. So in the end, I just felt sorry that he felt the need to treat people that way. But yeah, that was that. But other than that, it was a great time. There was never a dull moment in that hospital, especially during groups. Because it was acute care and we would get like people in and out, there was always like a different dynamic with each group, and walking in, you never really knew what you were gonna get because they were in a lockdown unit in the hospital. Sometimes these groups were the only interaction that they had with other people, or the only place that they could like feel a little human, and that's what we were trying to do with these groups. But next after that, I had my level 1 physical disabilities fieldwork, and I was at a veterans hospital doing acute care. So in this one, it was more observation, and it was only once a week for 10 weeks. So I was kind of just going in that one day a week and trying to soak everything in. Have you guys seen that meme with like the kid in school who's like opening the book and then like trying to like put the knowledge in his head? That's how I felt. Before this, I'd only done mental health fieldworks, and it's a whole different ballgame. Like, it is not the same. Like, what you thought you knew for mental health, like, you know nothing for physics. You're basically starting at zero again. So in this placement, I learned how to chart review. This is where I also wrote my first physics note and learned like what's supposed to go into it. My supervisor was on medicine, so we would see a lot of patients who were in there mostly for medical issues. But then I would also get to see like hip replacements, knee replacements, and some outpatient therapy because some people would come in for hand therapy. I got a glimpse into the documentation world of what it is to be an OT. You guys, my supervisor would literally spend most of the day writing notes, which was pretty boring for me, as you guys can imagine, because I was basically just sitting next to him watching him write notes. And that's just acute care. Like, you get a list of patients, you see each one for like 45 minutes, and then you're writing notes. But I did get to do some stuff. I got to do like part of an eval, just like the range of motion, manual muscle testing. I got to do a Hoyer lift, which if you guys don't know what that is, it's basically used for patients who are on the heavier side, and I will put a picture of it. So that was pretty cool, learning how to use the machine if I shall ever need it, which I've said this multiple times. I have no upper body strength, so I know I probably will. I got to do the mock on somebody. I got to see how like the wheelchair assessment works. So I learned a lot that semester. The following semester, which was my last semester of OT school, I had 2 level 1 fieldworks. And if you guys saw my everything's canceled video, and basically if you've been living in 2020, you know that Miss Rona really killed the vibes. My semester was cut short, so my field works were cut short. So that semester I was at a preschool and at a senior center. At the senior center, I was running groups again, this time on like health promotion, nutrition, fall prevention strategies, joint protection. And at this site there weren't any OTs, so we kind of went in there and just did our thing. But at this point we already had both level 1 and level 2 fieldworks in mental health, so we had the whole running groups thing down by this point, so we were comfortable with it. And then in the preschool, I was mostly seeing children on the autism spectrum, and they were so cute. And honestly, that's one of the things I was most sad about, the fact that my peds fieldwork ended early. I was looking forward to peds fieldwork for such a long time, and then the fact that it was cut short, Miss Rona. And in this one, I was mostly observation too, but I did get to lead a session and do an assessment on one of the kids. I was writing documentation, which again, it's a whole different animal than phys dis and mental health. Like the fact that OT has so many areas and like none of the areas you can carry over. Well, you can carry them over, but like when it comes to documentation, like your phys dis documentation is not the same as like peds documentation, and it's not the same as mental health documentation. So just learning all of that, it's a lot, but it was so fun because you basically got to play with the kids and they were so cute. The downside of that field work, I'd say, is that it was cut short, and that because it's a preschool, kids are always sick, and therefore I was always sick. And I guess it was a pretty big downside because it was when Miss Rona first stepped into the picture, so everyone was kind of like paranoid. And I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, so every time that I hear like something's going on, I start feeling all of the symptoms. But anyway, moving on to my final field work, my level 2 physical disabilities fieldwork that I am in right now. This one's the big one, guys, because this is the one that I'm actually planning on practicing. I'm in a hospital in inpatient rehab, and I've actually fallen in love with inpatient rehab. I think it's where I want to be. Out of all the fieldworks that I've been to, I feel like this is the one that I've learned the most, which is crazy because it's only week 3, but so much has happened in these past 3 weeks, and I've learned so much, and I feel like I'm finally getting like the hang of things. You guys watched my last video. I was a confused mess, but week 3, I can say that I have a little idea of what I'm doing. We treat 4 to 5 patients a day, and usually it's from an hour to an hour and a half for each patient. One of my struggles right now is writing notes, and it's not so much like what goes into the note, it's the time that it takes me to write the note. I feel like it takes me way too long to get through one note. I know it's something that'll come with time and I'll get faster with it as I do it, but because I'm so slow at it, I have been leaving the hospital a lot later than I should. And you guys already know that I have a pretty long commute, so I don't get home till like 6:30 sometimes, and by the time I'm home, I'm super exhausted. So I'm just trying to figure out like my work-life balance right now, because there isn't one right now, but I really do love it. I'm constantly learning. I always got to be on my toes, and it's a lot to take in, but I'm so grateful for this placement and super grateful for my CI. So much has happened. One of the things that happened, I got peed on by patients. Fun times. I was doing an eval, and part of the eval is toilet transfers. So I was here transferring my patient, and he's like a solid min to mod at this point, which means that when I'm transferring, I'm doing a good chunk of the work. So I get him on the toilet, and then as he's there, he's like, oh wait, I gotta pee. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, let's get your pants off. And he's like, wait, no, I pee standing up. And I'm like, okay, so let's stand you up. Little did I know what was gonna happen next. So I get him up, and he also has knee buckling, which is like where his knee kind of like gives out. So I had to have my knee in front of his to kind of like block it, and that was where it went south. So the man takes it out and he just goes for it. No aim, and he actually didn't even notice that it got on me, so I didn't want to make him feel bad about it. And luckily another therapist had an extra pair of scrubs, but boy did I learn my lesson, because after that day I have been carrying an extra pair of scrubs in my backpack. It's a necessity. If you guys want to see like a what's in my backpack fieldwork edition, let me know and I'll film that for you guys. I used to spend hours on YouTube like watching those videos, and I don't know like what fascinated me about those videos, but I don't know, I'm just nosy and I like to see what people carry in their bags. That's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you guys want to see more videos from me, you can click here and here. If you guys want to subscribe, you can click here, and I will see you guys next week.